So you've seen pictures like this before. Look at these rocks. They didn't always look like this. They've changed. So what's happened to them? Give me one of your ideas. What's happened to these rocks? So you might have said wind or the sun or water or acid affected these rocks, and those would all be correct answers. This is about weathering. These rocks have been weathered. And so this video is going to be about weathering. You want to get out your notes that look like this. This is our new set of notes. We're on F. This is going to be about physical weathering. So situate your notes so that you can see your notes and the video at the same time on two different windows. So what is weathering? What is weathering? Well, weathering, like we saw in that earlier video, is the breakdown of rock on the surface of the earth. So things, first of all, things way down inside the earth don't get weathered. They have to happen on where the atmosphere is, where the weather is. So rock gets breaking down into pieces. And there's two kinds of weathering. There can be physical weathering, or there can be chemical weathering. And we're going to take notes on both of these. So make sure you write those things down as we go along. So here's some examples of physical weathering. Physical weathering.
Believe it or not, the rolling countryside of Cornwall in southwest England used to look more like the Himalayas or the Alps. Mountains don't last forever. They gradually wear away at a rate of about 10 centimetres every 1,000 years. So all that's left in Cornwall today is a series of domed shapes, giving the landscape its rolling appearance. Changes in temperature from day to night and the expansion of freezing water cause rocks to wear away. When water enters a crack in a rock, it expands as it freezes overnight. When the ice turns to water and freezes again, it forces the crack open a little more. As the water seeps even further, the crack widens. This freeze-thaw action is repeated. It eventually causes pieces of rock to break off. They fall down the mountainside, where they lie as pieces of jagged rock known as scree.
So this was called frost wedging, and it's responsible for breaking up mountains. And I like what he said about, on average, mountains disappear about 10 centimeters every 10 years. That doesn't sound like very much, but over millions of years, mountains disappear. And this is one of the main ways they do it. Water fills in these cracks when it rains. Overnight, it expands and it cracks them, and eventually it's going to break down the rock. That's called frost wedging. So let's write that down. Frost wedging is one example of physical weathering. And so here it is. The water gets into the cracks in rock. 2, water freezes and expands. And 3, the rock splits apart. So make sure that's written down. Remember, you can pause this video so that you can get these into your notes. So there is something that happens in our cities, and I think you know the outcome of this. So potholes. Where do potholes come from? In potholes, water is going to seep down through. My little point here. It gets through the pavement, and it might sit here underneath the soil, underneath the pavement, underneath the street. If there's a little pool right there, and what happens is eventually that pool, if it's cold enough, it'll freeze, and if it freezes, it's going to expand, and it's going to push the road up. And if it pushes the road up, now there's all this extra pressure from the cars hit it. They're pushing down on it. But when that water when that water thaws, now when the tires push down on it, it's going to bust through, just like that, and you end up with a pothole. So we're going to add that to our list. potholes in roads is caused by water freezing under the road and making the road bunch up and then creating a pothole. So what about these rocks? These rocks are in the desert. They're not being eroded by water. So what's weathering these rocks? Wind. Wind carries little bits of rock, like sand, and the sand is abrasive, and it just bites away at those rocks. What about these rocks right here? These rocks right here, why are they weathered? Well, gravity has actually pulled them down. Maybe a combination of frost, freeze, and then gravity pulled them down. And then the last, these next to the ocean, why are they so smooth? What weathered these rocks? You might have guessed it. Or here, same thing, maybe rushing water. So those are three things that also can help rocks rub together. When they rub together, little rocks on big rocks or little rocks on little rocks, it's called abrasion. Abrasion is when, well, here we go. When rocks rub against rocks, which wears them down. Let's make sure that you write that down. So what is it caused by? It's caused by three things: wind, or gravity, or water. Those three things cause abrasion. So we have one more kind of physical weathering. So what caused these rocks to weather? What do you think? What are these trees doing to that rock? And who made these holes in that rock? And who made the holes in this rock? Well, the thing that all these three things have in common are biological things: trees, animals, and lichens. Lichens are a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and an algae, but in each case, these biological components are wearing away at the rock. So that's the third one: biological activity. So tree roots will push rocks apart, just kind of like frost wedging. And animals make holes for homes. They do that by either scraping those rocks away, or maybe they exude some kind of acid. And lichens excrete chemicals like an acid so they can get a purchase. And in so doing, they weather the rock. Make sure that all of these are in your notes: frost wedging, abrasion, and biological activity. So that's physical weathering. We still have chemical weathering.